Hello Bear Den, it's your den leader Mr. Townsend again, coming to you this week with getting started on a new adventure called Fur, Feathers, and Ferns. So if you've got your handbook or you've got your digital handbook, you can find it on page 87, and it looks like this. And so this is what the belt loop will look like. And the adventures we're going to do today virtually are going to be numbers 3, 5, 6, and we'll talk a little bit about number 7. And then next week what we'll do is we'll go do a couple outings. One of them will be a hike to do for number requirement 1. And then we're going to go on Wednesday to the Raptor Education Group in Anago to learn about birds of prey like vultures and owls and hawks and eagles. And that one will take care of requirement number 2. So before we get started with all of that cool stuff today, let's start off our meetings the way we always start them off, with the Pledge of Allegiance, the Scout Oath, and the Scout Law. Please raise your right hand in the Scout salute if you are in uniform, or place your right hand over your heart and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2. Now please raise your right hand in the Cub Scout sign and join me in saying the Scout Oath, followed by the Scout Law. On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country, to obey the Scout Law, to help other people at all times, to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. A Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. 2. The first requirement we're going to work on today is number 3. And if you have your handbook with you, you can see it says name one animal that has become extinct in the last 100 years and one animal that is currently endangered, and then explain what caused their decline, what caused their numbers to go down. I'll just read to you from the book here for a second, then we'll talk about it. So, an animal species becomes extinct when its last member dies. Extinction happens for many reasons, including loss of habitat, so where they live, overhunting, climate change, or the appearance of a new predator or disease. You've probably heard of animals like dinosaurs that became extinct millions of years ago, but some animals have become extinct more recently. A good example is the passenger pigeon. When Europeans first moved to North America, there were billions of passenger pigeons. In the 1700s, a man named Cotton Mather wrote about a flock of birds that was a mile wide and took several hours to pass overhead. Crazy, right? Passenger pigeons were an important source of food in the 1800s, and they were hunted nearly to extinction. A few survived in captive flocks, meaning that they were kept by people, but the last passenger pigeon, Martha, who is named after Martha Washington, the wife of the first president of the United States, died in 1914 at a Cincinnati zoo. That was a sad story. That was an example of an animal that went extinct right here in North America. But not all stories have to end sad. After World War II, the American bald eagle was in serious decline. A pesticide called DDT was poisoning the fish that eagles like to eat, as well as other big birds of prey who eat fish, and it was seriously hurting the numbers. In 1967, the species was listed as endangered. DDT was banned in the United States in 1972, which helped the eagles rebound and their numbers started to come back up. Conservationists also worked hard to breed captive eagles, reintroducing them into the nature and protecting their nest sites. By 1995, bald eagles were listed as threatened, which is better than endangered, and in 2007, the species was removed from the list of threatened and endangered species altogether. It's still considered illegal to kill, sell, or possess bald eagles without special permission. So, as you can see, even though some animals are endangered, there are some success stories where humans do a good job of protecting them and taking care of them so that they can come back and and be healthy and have a good sized population again. But if we don't do that, then we can lose these animals forever. Why would we want to save these animals? There's a couple reasons that the book lists for you. For one, not just animals, but plants can go extinct too. So contributions to medicine. Many important medicines come from plants. For example, scientists can make cancer medicine from the bark of a specific kind of tree called the Pacific yew tree. So if that tree were to go extinct, then we wouldn't have it to help create medicines that help people. They also make contributions to agriculture. Birds and insects are used to pollinate, and that helps us grow our food. Examples include bees, who pollinate fruit and nuts and trees, and melon vines. So bees are a super important part of our food chain, and if we didn't have those and they went extinct, we'd be in big trouble. Environmental monitors. Problems with animal species can alert humans to dangers to our planet. For example, when the bald eagle started to decline, we figured out that DDT was dangerous and then we banned it. Why else do we need to have them? It keeps the food chain going. Animals and plants are part of the food chain that provide food for other animals, including us. For example, eagles eat snakes, which eat mice, which eat crickets. If crickets went extinct, mice, snakes, and eagles would all go hungry. So if you take one piece out of that food chain, the rest of them suffer. And of course, one of the most basic reasons to save them is because all animals and plants are important and they are beautiful. So if you get rid of them, then we don't get to enjoy them anymore. So your assignment this week is to come up with, number one, you got to come up with one animal that went extinct in the last 100 years. So an animal that's no longer here. Can be in the United States, could be anywhere in the world. Number two, I want you to come up with an animal that's endangered. So one that's really close to being extinct but isn't gone yet. And then you need to tell me, why are they endangered, or why did they go extinct? And I'll show you two examples. So the first example I want to show you is this guy right here. He is called the West African black rhino. So there's a bunch of different rhinos on the planet. This was one of them. It lived in the western part of Africa in a country called Cameroon primarily. But unfortunately, they're no longer around. This particular type of rhino went extinct in 2006. And the main reason that we don't have these rhinos around anymore is because they were overhunted. So you can see he's got really cool horns. Well, some people illegally hunted these guys and wanted the trophy for the horn, and other people used them for like non-traditional medicine. So this one went extinct pretty recently, and other rhino species are threatened too, but this is just one example of one who went extinct very recently. And the other one I'll show you is this. It's an orangutan. Now these guys are primates just like we are. They live in an island, or kind of a Pacific island tropical country called Indonesia, and these guys are critically endangered. So there are not very many of them left in the wild, and the reasons that they're not doing very well is because, again, people are hunting them illegally, and then they're also having their habitat destroyed. So they live in these tropical forests, and the people who live in Indonesia are cutting into their forests and taking away the area that these things lived. So if we don't do things like stopping people from hunting them or protecting the areas where they live, we might not have orangutans very much longer. So those are two examples. You guys can come up with any two examples you want, and then we can talk about it when we meet up next, okay? So the next requirement we're going to work on is number 5. And that one says, use a magnifying glass to examine plants more closely. Describe what you saw through the magnifying glass that you could not see without it. So the book says plants are beautiful at a distance, but sometimes they're even more fun to look at up close. When you examine a plant with a magnifying glass, you can see all sorts of things that are hidden from your naked eye. What can you see? You can see the veins that form a leaf skeleton. You can see the tiny aphids, which are little bugs sucking sap out of a plant's stem. You can see drops of dew rolling down pine needles. You can see the tiny seeds that make up the eye of a sunflower. So if you have a magnifying glass at home, you can take that and go out and try and find some things in your backyard, or if you go on a little walk around your neighborhood or a hike, and then check them out with your magnifying glass. But remember, use the outdoor code when you're looking for objects. So that reminds us to be considerate in the outdoors. One way you can show consideration is to follow the leave no trace principles of leave what you find. So make sure if you take something out of nature, you leave it behind so other people can enjoy it in the future. If you don't have a magnifying glass, don't worry. I've included with this link for the video several photographs that are close-up objects of nature. And I printed one out to show you here. This is a close-up of a leaf. So if you don't have a magnifying glass at home, just look at these pictures and then see what you see. This is an example of all of those teeny tiny little veins that carry the nutrients and the water to all the tiny little parts of the leaf. Because leaves, unlike people, have to get their energy from the sun, and they use it to convert the sunlight into energy with chlorophyll. So you can see all the green pigment is the chlorophyll. So that you probably can't see unless you get your eye up really, really close to a leaf, but with a magnifying glass you can see it really easily. So check out the different pictures I've included. Even if you have a magnifying glass at home, you can look at them and see what you think. All right, now we're going to talk about requirement number 6. So requirement number 6 says learn about composting and how vegetable waste can be turned into fertilizer for plants. I don't know how many of you guys have a composting bin or anything at your house, but if you don't have one, we're going to talk about it. Maybe you guys want to start one. So when you eat a banana, do you throw the peel away or do you use it for compost? When you scrape extra food off your plate at dinner, where does it go? You can actually turn banana peels, food scraps, grass clippings, and even paper into fertilizer for plants by composting, rather than putting it into the landfill. Composting is a process where you mix organic materials in a pile or a container along with a little water. Worms and insects chew up the material and help good bacteria grow in it. In a month or two, you end up with a dark, rich fertilizer that you can spread around the plants to help them grow. You can make a compost pile in the corner of your yard or use a special composting container. Add water from time to time so the compost stays as wet as a damp sponge. Once a week, stir the compost from the outside in, and that's all you have to do. The worms and insects will do the rest. I found a really cool video on YouTube that talks about this, and I've included it with the email for this adventure. So check that out. It's only about 5 minutes long, but it explains it really well. I also have a couple of handouts that I attached to this email, which talk about the different things you can put into your compost bin. So they usually break them down into brown, which are like the dry items, and green, which are like the wet items. So look through that list and see which ones that you would put in your compost bin. And then I have another attachment which has do's and don'ts for composting. So you can see do's are like the things that were on the green and brown list, and the things that are don'ts are things like cooking grease, dairy products, meat products, cheese, things like that, things that might attract pests. So if you guys want to try making your own compost, you can look at the handbook, has a suggestion on how to start one, and then from there you guys can maybe get your own compost and use it in your garden. Which leads us to our next requirement, number 7. So requirement number 7 talks about planting a vegetable or herb garden. It's not really the right time of year to get that started, outside anyway. But if you guys like herbs for your cooking, like basil or oregano, thyme, things like that, you could possibly get those started in a pot and grow them indoors. So if you guys want to try that, that's one of the electives, but that would be another thing you could work on. So check out the video I included for the composting and think about whether or not maybe your family wants to start doing that if you haven't already. So with that, we'll wrap up our meeting this week. Hope you guys had a good time working with your parents and getting these activities done, and we'll see you at the outings coming up. Have a good week.